The crystal chandeliers of the Waldorf Astoria's grand ballroom sparkled overhead as I sat at my assigned table, deliberately placed near the kitchen entrance, far from where my family held court at my father's 70th birthday celebration. My modest navy dress from a department store chain drew subtle sneers from my siblings, who draped themselves in designer labels. "Still driving that 10-year-old Honda, Rachel?" my sister Jennifer called out, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dismissively. "I thought you said that promotion at the bank was coming through." If she only knew that I own not just the bank, but the holding company that controlled 37 regional banks across 3 continents. All carefully hidden behind layers of shell corporations and private trusts. "The promotion's on hold," I replied quietly, checking my phone as another alert came in. "Pacific Northwest mortgage acquisition ready for final approval. Current owners unaware of buyer's identity." The current owners being my brother Michael's struggling mortgage company, the one he'd built with loans from our father and constant boasting about his business acumen. "Rachel's always been practical," my stepmother Diana pronounced, her Chanel suit probably worth more than what they thought I made in a year. "Not everyone is meant for the executive track." I hid a smile, thinking of the executive meeting I'd chaired that morning, not in some corporate office, but in my private boardroom overlooking Central Park. The same building where Diana had been rejected for a condo purchase last month, deemed financially insufficient by the board I secretly controlled. "Speaking of practical," Michael smirked, swirling his expensive scotch, "how's that investment plan going? Still putting $100 a month into your retirement account?" My actual investment portfolio could buy his entire mortgage company's annual revenue 1,000 times over. The acquisition alert buzzed again. "Transfer of funds prepared. Awaiting your authorization." "I'm managing," I said mildly, wearing the same careful mask I'd maintained for 15 years while building my hidden empire. "The bank's 401k match helps." "Oh honey," Jennifer laughed, sharing a knowing look with her hedge fund manager husband, "you really should let us handle your money. Thomas could put you into some basic mutual funds, something safe for someone at your level." Thomas nodded condescendingly, unaware that my private equity firm owned controlling interest in his hedge fund's parent company. Another alert flashed: Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund requesting increased investment allocation. Your current net worth exceeds their minimum threshold by 300%. Rachel just needs to accept her limitations, Diana added, patting my hand with false sympathy. "We can't all be financial wizards like Michael and Jennifer." I thought about the financial empire I'd built while they thought I was processing loan applications in a basement office. The global network of banks, investment firms, and real estate holdings, all operating under different names, all threading back to my private holding company, Nightingale Global Partners. "Did you at least get the Honda's air conditioning fixed?" Michael asked, drawing snickers from his country club friends. "Last time you looked like you were melting in that polyester blazer." The Honda was actually a carefully maintained prop, just like my modest apartment and sensible wardrobe. My real car collection, housed in a private garage in Monaco, included vehicles they'd only seen in magazines. "Still saving up for repairs," I replied, watching another alert light up my phone. "Middle Eastern Investment Consortium offering 40% premium for Pacific Northwest mortgage shares. Recommend proceeding with original acquisition plan." "I'm telling you," Jennifer insisted, "Thomas could set you up with a payment plan for a new car. Something certified pre-owned within your means." My phone buzzed again, my private banking team confirming the transfer of $2 billion to complete today's acquisitions, including the purchase of my brother's company, though he wouldn't know that until tomorrow's announcement. "Remember when Rachel wanted to work in investment banking?" Diana reminded everyone with a theatrical sigh. Thank goodness the HR department knew better. Some people just aren't suited for high finance. The same HR department that now reported to a subsidiary I controlled. Just like the bank that rejected my credit card application 5 years ago, now owned by one of my holding companies. Through the crowd, I could see my father accepting congratulations from New York's financial elite. He hadn't even acknowledged my arrival, too busy basking in Michael and Jennifer's supposed success. If he only knew that his practical daughter could buy and sell everyone in this room. My phone lit up with another message. "Ma'am, final authorization needed for Pacific Northwest mortgage acquisition. Share transfer will trigger SEC filing requirements. revealing new ownership structure. I smiled, watching Michael boast about his company's latest expansion plans that would never materialize once I took control tomorrow. Sometimes revenge isn't about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about quietly buying everything they value while they're too busy mocking your Honda. More champagne for the real estate table, Jennifer commanded a passing server. Rachel, stick to white wine. We wouldn't want you overspending on drinks. If she only knew that I owned the champagne company, and the hotel, and the bank holding her mortgage. The first ripple of change came through the ballroom at precisely 9 p.m., when smartphones began buzzing with breaking news alerts. Michael's face drained of color as he read the notification. Breaking. Pacific Northwest Mortgage acquired by Nightingale Global Partners in $4.2 billion deal. What the hell? Michael stammered, nearly dropping his scotch. This has to be a mistake. My company isn't for sale. Actually, I said, finally opening my real work phone, a custom-secured device that controlled my global financial network. The sale was finalized 3 minutes ago. Your board approved it last week. Unanimously. The silence that fell over our section of the ballroom was absolute. Jennifer's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips as the implications began to sink in. Nightingale Global? Thomas, her hedge fund manager husband, whispered. But they're one of the most powerful private investment firms in the world. They own half the banks in Asia. Along with significant holdings in European real estate, African mining operations and South American agricultural concerns, I confirmed as my executive assistant James appeared with a leather portfolio. Would you like to see the complete acquisition documents? Diana's hand clutched her pearls. But you work in loan processing. That was a cover, James explained professionally. Ms. Nightingale has been building her financial empire for 15 years. The loan processor position was simply a convenient facade. The ballroom screens, meant for birthday photos, now displayed financial news tickers announcing the acquisition. Michael sat heavily in his chair as reporters began calling his phone. The board votes, he said weakly. The secret meetings last month were with my acquisition team, I nodded. Though they didn't know who they were really meeting. Nightingale Global operates through layers of subsidiaries. Very few people know who actually owns everything. Jennifer's perfect posture crumbled as she frantically Googled Nightingale Global Partners. 37 banks. Real estate holdings in 60 countries. Private equity portfolios worth over $300 billion at last count, I supplied. Though that number changes hourly. We just acquired a mining operation in South Africa. The paperwork should be hitting the news any minute. James distributed detailed portfolios to the stunned gathering, complete documentation of Nightingale Global's holdings, its vast network of companies, and its extraordinary reach across global markets. The Honda, Diana said faintly. Your cheap clothes. All part of the cover, I confirmed. It's amazing what you can learn about potential acquisitions when people think you're just another struggling employee. They reveal their company's weaknesses, their financial vulnerabilities. My phone buzzed continuously now, calls from business networks, interview requests from financial publications, urgent messages from global investment partners. The same people who'd walked past my budget table minutes ago were now desperately trying to catch my attention. The apartment in Queens, Jennifer said slowly, when you couldn't afford Manhattan, is actually part of a real estate holding company I control, I replied. Along with that building you tried to buy into last year. The one that rejected your application? I sit on the board. Anonymously, of course. The screens showed more breaking news. Nightingale Global's latest acquisitions, its market-moving investments, its quiet accumulation of power across multiple industries. The investment advice you rejected last Christmas, Thomas said weakly. When I offered to help with your retirement planning. Was amusing, I smiled. Considering Nightingale Global owns 30% of your hedge fund's parent company. Those basic mutual funds you suggested? We control them too. The next hour transformed not just my father's birthday celebration but the entire hierarchy of New York's financial elite. CNBC was running an emergency broadcast. Mystery billionaire revealed. Nightingale Global's secret owner emerges. Ms. Nightingale, a Wall Street Journal reporter who'd somehow gotten through security approached, Sources say you're also behind the recent acquisition of European Central Bank debt. Can you comment? All sovereign debt acquisitions are confidential, I replied, watching Michael's face turn even paler. The same brother who'd mocked my financial literacy was just realizing I controlled significant portions of global monetary policy. The investment club, Jennifer whispered, scrolling through Nightingale Global's holdings on her phone. When you asked to join last year. Was market research, I confirmed. Every time you rejected me for being too basic, I was identifying new acquisition targets. Those simple questions I asked, each one led to another billion-dollar deal. James approached with more documents, the complete organizational chart of my financial empire. Banks, investment firms, real estate conglomerates, all carefully hidden behind shell companies and private trusts. Your credit card application, Diana said weakly. The one that got rejected. Was at a bank I already owned, I nodded. Sometimes the best way to maintain a cover is to experience what regular people deal with. While you were mocking my poor credit, I was finalizing the purchase of the bank's parent company. My phone lit up with another alert. The Federal Reserve Chairman wanted an emergency meeting. The Treasury Secretary was on hold. The IMF Director needed to discuss global financial stability. The financial advisor I recommended, Thomas said slowly. Last month when you said you needed help with budgeting. Works for one of my subsidiaries, I replied. His entire firm was acquired by Nightingale Global last year. Those budgeting worksheets he offered were designed by my team to identify potential investment opportunities. The screens now displayed the true scope of Nightingale Global's influence, controlling stakes in major banks, dominant positions in real estate markets, strategic holdings in everything from technology to agriculture. Your student loans, Michael remembered suddenly, when you said you were still paying them off, were bought and forgiven years ago, I confirmed, along with about $10 billion in other people's student debt. One of my more satisfying acquisitions. My executive team continued distributing documents, detailed reports of Nightingale Global's market-moving trades, its strategic acquisitions, its quiet accumulation of financial power. Tomorrow, I announced to the stunned room, Nightingale Global launches its most ambitious project yet. We're establishing a $50 billion fund focused on acquiring distressed financial institutions, starting with the ones that rejected poor people like me. James distributed the final set of documents, my complete vision for transforming global finance from a tool of exclusion into an engine of opportunity. By the way, I added, gathering my things, that country club membership you're so proud of? Nightingale Global bought the entire club chain last month. I'm thinking of turning them into public parks. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't flaunting wealth. It's using it to change the very system that once excluded you. Your mortgage applications, I said to Jennifer and Michael as their phones buzzed with margin calls, might need revision. Nightingale Global just adjusted its lending criteria. We're especially strict with borrowers who mock people's Hondas. The next day's headlines would call it the greatest revelation in financial history. But it was more than that. It was proof that true power doesn't come from designer labels or social status. It comes from understanding money while others merely worship it. James, I called out as we prepared to leave, please ensure everyone receives our new financial inclusion policy. Especially the section about judging people by their car choices. Because the best success story isn't about joining the financial elite. It's about quietly becoming their boss while they're too busy counting their designer labels to notice. Oh, and Diana? I turned back one last time. That Chanel suit you're wearing? The entire fashion house is now owned by a Nightingale Global subsidiary. I'm thinking of turning it into a discount brand. My phone buzzed again, sovereign wealth funds desperately seeking investment opportunities, central banks requesting policy consultations, global financial institutions suddenly realizing who really controlled their destiny. The dinner reservations you couldn't afford, Michael said numbly, last month at Le Cirque. I own the restaurant, I shrugged. And the building. And the block. Amazing what you can buy while people think you're clipping coupons. As I walked out of the ballroom, I heard Jennifer's frantic voice. Call our broker. Call our banker. Call anyone. But what she didn't know was that they all worked for me now. Every financial advisor, every banker, Every broker they might run to was ultimately connected to Nightingale Global's vast network. Should we reveal the other acquisitions? James asked as we entered my waiting car. Not the Honda, but a custom Rolls-Royce designed for secure communications. Not yet, I smiled, watching the panic spread through the ballroom's windows. Let them wonder what else the poor sister owns. After all, I still have a few hundred shell companies they haven't discovered. Because true wealth isn't about showing off. It's about quietly owning everything while they mock your Honda's broken air conditioning. And I owned it all, right down to the air they were breathing in their soon-to-be foreclosed mansions. 1 month later, I sat in my real office, a penthouse suite overlooking Manhattan, reviewing the aftermath. Michael's mortgage company had been completely restructured, Jennifer's husband's hedge fund was under new management, and Diana's social circle was still reeling from discovering who really owned their country clubs. Ma'am, James entered with a fresh report. Your family has made 57 attempts to schedule meetings with you through various channels. How many of those channels do we own? I asked, already knowing the answer. All of them, he smiled. And their financial advisors are recommending they cooperate with Nightingale Global's new policies. Especially the ones about respectful treatment of less fortunate relatives. My father had tried reaching out through every financial connection he had, unaware that each path led back to me. His 70th birthday had become known in banking circles as the Nightingale Revelation, the day the financial world learned that the real power wasn't in the VIP section, but in the quiet corner near the kitchen. Should we accept any of their meeting requests? James asked.